where we made the decision to be accessible, it really started at the beginning of when Britannia arrived in Edinburgh. Our chief executive had been to Disney to do some of their training, and really he came back with a wealth of ideas. When Britannia arrived in Edinburgh 24 years ago, we were able then to really start at the very beginning, and it's from there that we started planning being as accessible as possible, and that stemmed from providing everybody with the same experience. And we wanted to give everybody a 5-star experience. So that's really where it came from. It was deep rooted within our chief executive and for when we established 24 years ago. Our staff are key in our accessibility journey, and they are the experience. So it's key that the experience starts with our staff. So it's key that we provide them with the correct training, and it all starts with attitude. So we hire for attitude, we train for skill. And really with regards to our inclusion policy and accessibility, that's where it stems from. So if they have the right attitude initially, then that will come out in the customer experience. And that is always key for us, is that customer experience. So yeah, it's very much, we have training in place, but they have to always have that attitude, and that's the key. The customer experience is king. So it's all about the communication and speaking to the customer and getting their feedback and their experience. TripAdvisor's a big one for us. We reply to every single TripAdvisor review, so we read them every day. Facebook reviews, Google reviews, but we also work with key accessibility groups. So we work with something called Ewan's Guide here in Scotland, I think throughout the UK, and they've been on board and rated us, if you like, and we've had them back on board quite a few times just to see exactly how accessible we are, and they've always been willing to make suggestions, which is great, so we're open to that. We've also worked with sort of elderly residential homes, we've got their feedback. There's also the Edinburgh Autistic Society group. They've been on board quite a few times, and all of this is to get their feedback, to get their interest, and where we look at doing any changes or modifications, that's where we find their feedback is key. And everything, those modifications, we don't see as a cost, it's an investment. So it's about, and it's no matter how small. So once we get that feedback, we look at what's possible, what we can do, and we'll continue to do that. Is to probably every year try to get these people back, these groups back. Sometimes we will sort of generally will say to them, we'll provide you with complimentary tickets, and then the basis of that is that if you can give us the feedback, that would be great. So it's always trying to get the feedback and always listening and looking at what's possible. So the range of things that we've looked at for those with accessibility issues is again, I talked about it being a journey, because it's for us to learn. It's maybe obvious when somebody says it, but a lot of disability, etc., are hidden. You can't see them. You don't realise it. My own mum has macular degenerative, and it wasn't until she got that I was like, wow, I really do appreciate actually the day-to-day challenges of that. So yeah, when we first opened, we had our audio guides, and then that's where we started to look at doing, we had an audio tour for those with visual impairments. We brought in our Braille script, and then we brought in our British Sign Language tablet, and then we also have something like a basic English tour as well. But then we started looking at bringing in sensory kits. So it's as and when people have fed back, customers have been, our visitor experience assistants have heard this feedback, that we've brought that in. So it's always looking at the tools. We also, when we developed our new website about 5 years ago, and for me, when we were developing it, it was key for them to look at the website and make sure it was as accessible as possible, and we have included all the groups possibly using it. We're not perfect, we're still looking at bits, but when I thought, well, let's start from developing a brand new website, now's the time to do it. Because certainly for me in marketing, I always talk about touch points in the customer journey, and that customer journey starts long before you even visit, before you bought the ticket. So we then also, we constantly update and change our accessibility statement and our policy, and that sits on our website, and we're always looking at ways of trying to enhance that, or having to adapt it or change it to give people as much information as possible. And that's actually something we got from Ewan's Guide. Ewan's Guide said, if nothing changes about wanting to go out for a meal or a restaurant to a visitor attraction. What I need, if I've got different challenges, is I need that information. And then it's up to me to make the decision whether I come or not. So that was quite interesting, I found. So it's giving them as many tools and information as possible so that they can hopefully choose to come and then have a 5-star experience. So with regards to accessibility contributing to our future and the future of the business, it's key. It's obviously been part of the journey from the very start for us, but again, we're on a journey. We don't know everything. We're still learning and adding, and obviously that has changed, and we've tried to adapt with our visitors, also actually staff. There may be various staff which have accessibility issues, so to keep that in mind. And yeah, we've had to keep our eye on the world and what's required. And I think it's always been there. It's just not always been a realization of it being there. So I think for us, it's got to be ingrained from the start. But with an aging population, yes. I think a lot of us, certainly the team, look at our own situations. I mentioned my mother who's macular degenerative. My granddad had dementia. So there's all these areas where you're kind of like, actually, you still want them. You don't want to provide barriers for people. So it's about, looking at the experience and not creating those barriers, and doing as much as we can, and looking at how the world is changing, and adapting for visitors and for staff.